It is well documented that history has not been kind to black inventors. While the world benefits from their inventions, the inventors often go unacknowledged. The Industrial Revolution is a prime example of this fact. What is commonly attributed to British ingenuity was actually stolen from Jamaican wisdom. Three-Fingered Jack and his band of metallurgists are the true architects behind the technology that would start the Industrial Revolution. But if you look him up, they will tell you he was a runaway slave with magic powers, that he terrorized plantations. But what they won't tell you is that they stole his inventions, framed him, and assassinated him and his character. So in this video, I'd like to tell you the true story of Three-Fingered Jack Mansong. But before we get into it, I'd like to give thanks to two people, because without them, we wouldn't know anything about this story. Number one is historian and researcher Jenny Bolstrode. She's the one who brought this information to light. So special thanks to her. And special thanks to Alex Mile Priest. Mr. Mile Priest is the Maroon who revealed that Jack was actually a Maroon.
Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, share the video, and leave some comments for the algorithm. Let's get into it.
Jack Mansong, or Three-Fingered Jack, as he is best known, is said to be a runaway slave who led a band of runaways in the St. Thomas region of the Blue Mountains in 1780. He and his gang allegedly committed many robberies and murders, killed party members sent to hunt them down, and kidnapped slaves and free Negroes on the windward roads. After his death, Jack became a legend, as his story was the subject of many books and plays written by European authors. There is more fiction and horror fantasy written about his life than actual facts. So much so that the fictitious books about him took over his story. What they say about him is either he was an escaped slave from Africa, some say Gambia, while others say Ghana, yet still others say he was born in Jamaica to enslaved parents from Gambia. Some authors say that he terrorized plantations alone with his obia powers, saying he could breathe fire and turn invisible. Bullets bounced off his body like iron, and he healed very quickly. What none of them talk about is his mastery of metallurgy that jump-started the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was a period of rapid technological, economical, and social growth that changed most societies from agrarian to industrial societies. Iron and steel played a vital role in the industrialization process. Thus, finding a way to produce metal efficiently and cost-effectively was paramount. Henry Cort is credited with creating the Cort process, a process of turning low-grade iron ore, or pig iron, into strong wrought iron bars. It's a relatively cheap process that made mass production easier and faster. This was instrumental in kickstarting the Industrial Revolution. However, upon closer inspection of historical documents, the process was not actually made by Cort. Jenny Bulstrode, a historian at University College London, discovered that he actually said he learned it from his cousin, John Cort, a merchant who shipped goods between Jamaica and England. John Cort was in Jamaica during the infamous events at Reeder's Pen, and John told Henry about John Reeder, who owned a foundry in Morant Bay. This foundry employed 76 black metallurgists. It was they who created the foundry and this process. John himself claimed to be quite ignorant of such business, and how the black metallurgists in his foundry were perfect in every branch of iron manufacturing. The Devon Archives records that the House of Assembly funded the construction of a foundry in 1772 and paid a Mr. John Reeder to run it. Reeder then contracted 76 black metallurgists, consisting mostly of Maroons and slaves, to build and operate it. They even tried bringing in 30 to 60 white men from England, but none were as good as the black metallurgists, and all but 2 were dismissed. By 1780, the foundry was extremely lucrative, raking in what would be in today's money $7.4 million a year. Of the 76 black metallurgists, we know the names of at least 14 who were enslaved, as they were forcibly baptized on July of 1780, and they were listed as property. We also have the name of a Maroon who worked there, named Kwashi, because he also decided to be baptized voluntarily in December of that year. However, the most important name is missing: the master metallurgist. From this, we can conclude that he and the other metallurgists were Maroons who did not baptize, as their names do not show up anywhere. Maroons maintained that the master metallurgist was Jack Mansong. The real Jack. Jack Mansong, the legendary Three-Fingered Jack. Contrary to popular belief, Three-Fingered Jack was not a runaway slave, but a true-born Blue Mountain Maroon, and a master ironsmith. According to Maroon sources, Jack was born in Jamaica. He is believed to be a descendant of Congo Maroons. However, his last name is more common in Nigeria, while the Congo version of his name is Mansong. Jack was a giant of a man, standing about 7 feet tall, powerfully built, with a big head and massive arms. He was called Three-Fingered Jack because he only had 3 fingers on one of his hands. He's said to have lost 2 of them in a battle against a slave who was trying to catch him for the bounty. Most artwork usually depict his right hand as missing the fingers, but some show the left. All contemporary depictions of Jack show him to be dressed in luxurious, possibly royal clothing, a feathered hat or a crown, as well as a lot of jewelry, exotic pelts, and several guns and expensive swords. This is contradictory to the runaway slave narrative, but I bet they would use the excuse that he acquired it through theft. He is also depicted wearing an abeng, the symbol of the true-born Maroons. Jack's reputation can best be surmised by Arthur C. Clarke's third law. Any sufficient advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. His knowledge of Maroon science made him seem almost magical, and he was said to be protected by powerful iron obi. This is the root of some of the stories about him being bulletproof and healing fast. He was a Maroon scientist and a master metallurgist, possibly of royal blood. The frame. In August of 1780, a month after the enslaved of the Foundry were baptized, the newspaper articles report of the notorious Three-Fingered Jack, the leader of a gang of 58 fugitive slaves. We believe these 58 fugitive slaves were actually Maroons among the 76 metallurgists, the same ones who built and operated the Foundry. Some Maroons are of the mind that the House of Assembly had nothing to do with the construction of the Foundry as records indicate. Rather, when the House got wind of the Foundry and how lucrative it was, they sought to take control of it, as well as the secrets to Jack's metallurgical processes, which would eventually be patented as the Cort process. However, from now on, the Jack process is what we will call it. Whether or not the House of Assembly actually paid for it and ordered its construction, the actual planning, building, and operating of the Foundry, as well as the Jack process, was ran by Jack and the Black Metallurgists. That's a dope band name. Jack and the Black Metallurgists. Jack and the 76 Black Metallurgists. Maroons say that Jack was either unwilling to sell the Foundry or share his secrets with the colonists, so they framed him as a fugitive slave and criminal in order to justify killing and robbing him. They assassinated his character first and labeled the Maroons and blacks who sided with him as fugitive slaves. As such, they became outlaws with bounties on their heads. Jack and the crew retreated into the Blue Mountains, where they were from, while the British ran a smear campaign on his name, using him as a boogeyman to slaves and planters alike, claiming he killed both indiscriminately, scaring the society into wanting him and his comrades dead. By branding him a slave, he could not own property or anything, and anything that belonged to him belonged to his owner. This is why they brought the plantation owner, John Reeder, and paid him to do the job, even though he refused originally, citing his ignorance of such matters. Killing Jack. In December 1780, the Assembly House offered a reward of £100 for the capture of Jack, and an additional £5 for each one of his crew members. Many people came after Jack for the bounty on his head, including free black Jamaicans as well as slaves. Freedom and a lifelong pension went to anyone who could bring Jack and the black metallurgists. Archives claim Jack and crew killed all the bounty hunters, as well as every unit of soldiers sent after them. One of the Maroons who still worked in the Foundry, named Kwashi, was willing to sell out, and he took on the task of bringing down Jack. It is said that he failed the first time, however, and was defeated by him, but lived. That same month, a newly christened slave named John Fouracres was killed attempting to capture Jack. In response, the assembly raised the bounty to £200. Jack's science continued to protect him, and his reputation grew, and so did the fear of him on the island, and everyone wanted him gone. According to Benjamin Mosley, who was an eyewitness and knew the individuals involved, he maintained Jack's power had something to do with rough magnetism, whereby, through some material practices, he was able to apprehend spiritual forces to work for him. This involved banging steel or pieces of iron rods, which in Maroon healing there is said to be a process of banging steel drums for such purposes. And in the 1800s, there were people talking about magnetic healing and things of that nature. But Jack was a true master of this. These fleeting accounts of the powers Jack possessed makes him sound like an iron bender of sorts, which is why they sought another iron worker who had knowledge of Maroon magic to hunt him down. Or Maroon science, I should say. In order to defeat Jack, Kwashi decided to get baptized. The reason Kwashi got baptized was for the name change, not religion. He changed his name to John Reeder. Yes, John Reeder, the man who was said to own the Foundry. The reason for the name was not out of admiration for John Reeder, but rather spiritual science. The name John to Akan people carries the spirit of John Kani, an Akan king and famous warrior who defeated enslavers. Ironic, I know. And at the time Kwashi was baptized, it was also John Canoe Festival in Jamaica. Reeder was the name of the Foundry. Giving him that name was harnessing the spirit of the Foundry. If you believe that the Foundry originally belonged to Jack and it was taken over by Reeder, then by taking on the name Reeder, he was symbolically taking over Jack in that same way. The same way John Reeder took over Jack's Foundry. He said that he was trying to harness the power of the Foundry before he fought Jack this time. Jack was said to reside in a cave in the woods in St. Thomas. On January 31st, 1781, near Hayfield Woods in St. Thomas, Jack was alone on the hill when he was ambushed by a party led by Kwashi. He only had time to grab his sword and began dueling. At some point, Kwashi and Jack engaged in hand-to-hand combat. However, Kwashi was soon joined by Samuel Grant, a Scott Hall Maroon, as well as another Maroon named William Cockburn, also known as Little Quaco. Jack held his own against both men, but while engaging with Sam and Reeder, Jack was shot 3 times, allegedly by Little Quaco. Despite his injuries, he kept fighting. He then threw himself over the hill and tumbled down, but Kwashi pursued him and killed him, removing his head and arms, carrying it back to town in a pail of rum. Jack's wife and infant child were present, but she took off running when they attacked and tumbled down the hill with the baby and escaped. This hill is known today as Three Finger Woman's Tumble Pass. Post-death. When Kwashi returned to Kingston with his trophies, he was followed by a large crowd who celebrated his victory. Free and enslaved alike celebrated him, and he became a hero on the island. Kwashi was given a pension and became chief of Charlestown. Jack had been feared throughout the British Empire because of the bounty and newspaper articles. His terror had spread all over the kingdom. So when Jack was killed by Kwashi, he became an international celebrity. Ben Moseley, who witnessed the events, published it in a book, and many plays and pantomimes soon followed, where interestingly, most of them portrayed Kwashi as a slave, a loyal slave who became a hero, not a Maroon. Kwashi lived long and wealthy and passed away in 1816 as a respected hero, not a sellout. News of his death reached England and Scotland, defining his international celebrity. So this time, I'd like to address something important regarding the modern perspective of Maroons killing Jack Mansong. Maroons today are disrespected and looked down upon for the killing of Jack Mansong and other such figures. Yet, the ancestors of the very people who criticize Maroons, they celebrated that Maroons killed Jack Mansong at the time. Back then, the entire island wanted Jack gone. Slaves, free blacks, white militia, and even mulattoes came after him. Nowadays, from the perspective of black unity against colonialism, Jack Mansong, framed as a runaway slave and not a Maroon, and also being betrayed by the Maroons, makes the Maroons killing him look really bad. But let's make it clear, there was no unified consensus among the Maroons to kill Jack. Not all Maroons were on board with it. Even then, it was a matter of bounty hunting, which the entire island took part in. The Maroons were just successful, where the enslaved and free black population were not. Soon after Jack's death, the foundry was torn down and shipped to England. Martial law had been enacted at this time, and the governor claimed the reason for tearing it down, besides the fact that it was illegal to have foundries at that time, it was because of the fear that rebellious parties could use it to make weapons. The fact that an alleged band of fugitive slaves was right near the foundry makes those fears sound very reasonable. Also, considering the Maroon territory wasn't far and many Maroons worked there, and Maroons recently defeated them in the Maroon War, as well as the recent revolt, Tacky's Revolt, which is when they passed a law banning such foundries on the island. It seems odd that they had Maroons working in a foundry in the first place, but apparently, since the end of the First Maroon War, they had been exclusively hiring Maroons to do all iron work on the island. John Cort was in Jamaica during this time, and he got a good look at the foundry and the technology. His cousin Henry Cort ran a struggling foundry and was also in debt. It was John who told Henry about the Jack process, and he patented it as the Cort process, which then kickstarted the Industrial Revolution, and the rest is history. As for the rest of Jack's party, many of them were captured. Others fled and started new towns, and even served to be a menace in their own right. Jack's legacy would be fictionalized and rewritten many times over by various European authors, each with their own interpretation, drawing from their imagination, all casting him as a slave, with Kwashi as a heroic house Negro. He was not portrayed as a Maroon in these stories, but rather a good slave. Literal evidence that they recast Maroons as slaves in their iteration of Jack's story. The lies. While all colonial records indicate the House of Assembly paid John Reeder to have it built, and Reeder contracted Maroons and slaves to work on it and build it and operate it, I am personally of the mind that this may not be entirely true. The official records make no mention of Jack Mansong and his fugitives being members of the Foundry, but many circumstances surrounding the events suggest that they were part of it in some way. Some Maroons believe that Maroons built it and that it was a hostile takeover, and the documents are possible fabrications or exaggerations or filled with deliberate omissions. One thing is for certain, the Foundry and Jack are intrinsically linked. There's something between Jack and the Foundry that has been omitted from the history. It seems as if the Foundry had a personal vendetta against him, and it may very well be, as the Maroon Mile priest said, that Jack was indeed the founder and was not a runaway slave but a Maroon. One reason I believe that the information contained in the documents are not to be unquestionably trusted is the account of his daughter. John Reeder's daughter said that they sent the Negroes to England to learn ironwork, where they became perfect. This doesn't make sense because, again, all ironwork in Jamaica had been done by Maroons. All of it. And they had been perfect. Ironwork in West Africa has been known to be superior. Jamaican history shows that the Assembly House regularly hired Maroons in West Africa for their knowledge of ironwork. Upon visiting Jamaica, an author remarked, all the ironwork on the island was done by blacks, and none was superior to their craft. 2. Documents state that they brought 30 Englishmen or so to Jamaica to work in the foundry, but they found that none of them were as useful as the blacks and sent the rest but 2 home. So this leaves me with some questions. If you sent 76 blacks to England to study metalwork, where are the records? Where's the ship records of the voyage? Where's the records of the school they went to? Now, the foundry was said to be a secret from the British, so why would you send Jamaicans there to go study, to come back and build the foundry? Wouldn't it be easier to bring teachers to Jamaica? Why did you bring the 30 white metallurgists? Why couldn't they use the white ones they brought from England? Why did they send them back home?
Jack Mansong, or Three-Fingered Jack, was not a runaway slave terrorizing plantations with his magic. He was a Maroon and a master metallurgist. Some say he was the head of Reeder's Foundry. It was this foundry that would create the Cort process and ultimately kickstart the Industrial Revolution. Whether or not he was part of the foundry, he was indeed a master metallurgist who had superior understanding of metalwork than the Maroons who worked at the foundry. He was sold out, written off, and assassinated by another Maroon metallurgist from said foundry. But the truth of what actually took place has been lost to history. So please, if you enjoyed this, share the legacy of Three-Fingered Jack and the 76 black metallurgists who started the Industrial Revolution. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share the video. Special thanks to Jenny Bolstrode and Alex Mayo Priest of the Maroons for this information. Also, please subscribe to my Patreon, as YouTube often censors or demonetizes my videos. So if you'd like to support and see the uncensored versions, or just keep me making these videos, then head on over to the Patreon and choose what the next video will be. Link in the description. Till next time.